This is going to be a long one, so you should probably grab a coffee. Hey guys, I got a brand new video for you today, and a lot of you know that I'm a full-time photographer, but I also do a lot of filmmaking and video and stuff like that, and I would say that my business is like 50-50, kind of like half photography, half video, and you know, like I could be working on a music video treatment as well as editing photos at the same time. So this video is for the filmmakers, and I don't talk a lot about video, and I would like to talk more about video, but there's been 2 new cinema cameras announced, and the first one is the Canon C200, and I just want to go through the specs and talk about what I think about the camera. And then also the Panasonic EVA1 just was announced literally yesterday. That camera doesn't come out till the fall, so not everything has been 100% confirmed. But I'm going to run through the specs on that as well, and then I'm just going to kind of give you my general opinions. So this one's going to be long. Can't remember all the specs, so I'm going to have to read them off the iPad. So the C200 has a Super 35 CMOS sensor. I think it's similar to the C300 Mark II. I've heard mixed reports. Some people are saying it's the same sensor out of the C700. Can't see that, but maybe it is. It's got dual pixel autofocus, which is awesome. It's the newer version where you can pretty much touch anywhere on the sensor to focus, not just the center point. It's got 10 stops of built-in ND, 4K DCI up to 60 FPS, and 120 frames per second in 1080p. C-Log, C-Log 3, 4-inch touchscreen, built-in XLR inputs, 3.5mm mic input just for scratch audio, 1 CFast 2.0 slot, and 2 SD card slots. It's got SDI out, HDMI out, Ethernet out for streaming like live events and stuff like that. And it takes the same battery as a C300 Mark II. So the interesting thing about the C200 is the codecs and the frame rates and the bit rates that Canon has decided to use in this thing. So it can shoot RAW internally on a new codec called Cinema Raw Lite, and basically that just gives you slightly less information than normal RAW so that you can actually save more information to the CFast card. And it only does it in DCI 4K. It'll do 12-bit up to 30 frames per second and then 10-bit up to 60 frames per second. And that's only internally to the CFast cards. You can only record regular UHD 8-bit to the SD cards, and it's kind of disappointing because that's not 422. It's only 420 8-bit, and it's crazy because you've got this RAW format and then nothing in between, and then you've just got 8-bit MP4s, which is fine for most people, like people doing YouTube videos and stuff. There's a lot of people out there that want something in between, which is what the C300 Mark II has an XF AVC codec, and Canon's saying they're going to bring that codec to this camera next year, early next year. And if you want something in between, you got to record through the HDMI out because it does have 10-bit 422. Unfortunately, the SDI output on the C200 is only HD, and it won't output RAW like the C300 Mark II. But a really cool option you can do is you can record the 4K DCI RAW to the CFast card and then proxy over a 2K file to the SD card at the exact same time. So for people with like slower computers, you can basically edit the 2K files in proxy and then out to 4K DCI. As for the body, everything's laid out really nicely. It's about 3.2 pounds with everything on it, the handles and the screen and stuff like that. As for size, it's slightly smaller than the C300 Mark II, and I would say it's a little bit shorter than the C100 Mark II. So the cool thing is you can break it down because it's so light. I think with everything off, it's around 2.9 pounds, and that'll actually fit into the Ronin M or the Ronin MX gimbal. They also have a second offering, which is the C200b, and that comes without the EVF, the grips, and yeah, just the top grip, the side grip, and the EVF. And basically you just get the body, and then you can rig it up anywhere you want. That's the main gist of the C200. I want to talk about the new Panasonic EVA1 because that was just announced yesterday, and some things on that are actually better than the C200, but it's not coming out till fall. But I'm going to go into the specs now. It's got a 5.7K Super 35 sensor. It's got 4K UHD up to 60 FPS and 2K up to 240 FPS. Now that would be awesome because you can easily upscale 2K to 4K if you want to dump in some slow motion. And 240 frames per second in 2K would be super helpful. Maybe Canon can add that, probably not, but that's pretty sweet. It's got electronic image stabilization, and that's not IBIS. That doesn't have sensor stabilization, that's just electronic. So what it'll do is it'll probably crop in digitally and do kind of like warp stabilizer in camera. It's got built-in 6 stops of ND, it's got an IR cut filter, it's got dual native ISO. I'm not really sure how that technology is, but it's allowing you to be able to increase your ISO without degrading the quality. I'll leave a link below where you can kind of read more about that. It's going to have Vlog, it's going to have a Canon EF mount, which is really weird. Usually it's PL mount or whatever else proprietary Panasonic lenses would fit that. Obviously it's a Super 35 sensor, so none of their Micro Four Thirds lenses will fit it. And that's pretty cool though, because a lot of people have EF mount cinema primes, or a lot of people are adapting glass to the GH5 anyway through a Metabones adapter. I'm doing it right now on the GH5. I'm actually recording in vlog on the GH5 for the first time. Thumbs up if you like the quality. And this camera is going to be around the same price as the C200 at $8,000 apparently. As for a codec, it's using the 400 megabits per second, 4K UHD 10-bit 422 internal up to 60 FPS. It uses the same color science as their flagship cinema camera, the VariCam, and they're saying in a future update that the 5.7K RAW can be sent through SDI, so that's friggin' sweet. This camera is slightly lighter than the C200. It's 2.65 pounds, and the C200 with everything rigged up is 3.2 pounds. But this camera doesn't have an EVF like the C200 has, just the LCD. But it has two built-in XLR inputs like the C200, but I think it has a built-in mic, which the C200 doesn't have. And yeah, I talked about the EF mount. That's really interesting. I guess there's probably not going to be any autofocusing on it, which you don't really need on a cinema camera, but it's pretty cool that the C200 does have the dual pixel autofocus if you want it. Anyway, that camera's not coming out till fall, and not everything has been confirmed, so that's really all I want to say about it, because I don't really have any hands-on. I watched a bunch of videos on it yesterday, and I was getting pretty excited about all the stuff that's coming out. And that's where it brings me to this section of the video. I actually pre-ordered the C200b. So I'm going to get the C200b that doesn't come with the EVF, doesn't come with the handles, doesn't come with the grip, and doesn't come with the touchscreen. All those things I don't really need because this camera will probably live on my gimbal most of the time, and I already have external monitors that I can use, and I can also use my Atomos Ninja Inferno to record out if I want to. A lot of you are going to be like, oh Lee, why are you buying a cinema camera? You just make YouTube videos. But honestly, I don't even think of myself as a YouTuber. I shoot a lot of music videos, and I feel like this is kind of stepping up my production quality. I'm just tired of trying to find a camera that can do both, you know, because I do photography and video. I'm tired of trying to find a photo camera that's awesome that also does video that's awesome. And you know, Sony does a really good job, but you know, it's plagued with overheating and battery life sucks and stuff like that. And so I think I'd just rather have a dedicated video camera and then a dedicated photo camera. And I love Fuji so much, you know, that's my dedicated photo cameras. I don't really love shooting video on them, and that's why I shoot with Sony still, or the GH5. And you're probably saying, Lee, you got way too many cameras, and you're probably right. I don't know if I'll get rid of the GH5 or not. I've enjoyed shooting with it, but there's a lot of things that I don't like about it. I don't like the Micro Four Thirds sensor, and you know, I don't really use the autofocus, but it's not very good if I did want to use it on the gimbal. And then, you know, it's not the best in low light. I've talked about this before, how I wouldn't bring it past 1600 ISO, and I shot a client video with it where it was at 1250 ISO, and there was still quite a bit of grain in it, and I wasn't super impressed with that. So I think that the C200b will be a good upgrade from that, and I may sell the GH5. Also, the GH5's 10-bit codec that's internal is actually really hard to edit with, and I've been using the Ninja Inferno lately on it to record out to 10-bit 422 straight to ProRes, because that's way easier to work with. So yeah, that's basically why I want to get the C200b. It also does have the dual pixel autofocus, so if I want to use that on the gimbal and I don't have to set up my follow focus and stuff like that, it's pretty cool that I could have that option. I love Canon's color science, and this is actually finally a camera that I can get excited about from Canon, and it hasn't been that way for a really long time. Anyway, the C200b is basically $6,000 US, which is basically pretty affordable. A lot of you people might not think so, but when it comes to cinema cameras, that's actually a really good price. You know, comparing it up to like the FS5, this camera is quite a bit better than the FS5. It's Super 35 sensor. The ISO is actually really good on this. A lot of people are saying that it's really similar to C300 Mark II, and a lot of people shoot ISO 6400 on that camera, no problem. And lightweight when it has all the attachments off of it, so 2.9 pounds is not that heavy on the gimbal. It's probably really comparable to like a 5D Mark III with a battery grip, something like that. It should be pretty close to the weight of that. I've ran that on my Ronin, so I already know that it's not that bad. The only thing that sucks is the codecs, and you know, they're obviously going to bring an update next year, but I probably will be recording to the Atomos Ninja Inferno anyway, just because it's so easy, and because CFast cards cost so much. They're saying that 15 minutes of video in the DCI 4K RAW is like 128 gigs, so you can kind of see that it would get really expensive to be buying CFast cards to shoot for an entire day. Anyway, those are just my thoughts on both of those cameras. What are your thoughts? What do you think? Maybe you think I'm crazy for getting a cinema camera. It'll pay itself off in a couple jobs, and I'm not too worried about that. So anyways, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you dislike this video, give it a thumbs down twice, and I'll see you in the next one.